All right. Oh, hello. So we're getting started here live. Can you hear me online? And can you see? Please answer in the chat so that I know if it's okay.
Just went online.
Okay.
There's a bit of a lag.
Okay, Ruth says can see and hear. Okay, well, let me know through the chat if there's anything that needs adjustment, but I think our basic setup is good to go. And I blame DC traffic for everything else. So I'm just checking against the tuner, and that is just about right. So. Okay, well that's great. It's great to have you online as well as here in person. And I'll see what I can do about getting the glasses warmed up when they're not. Yeah, Jane's got the right idea. When they're not at the right temperature, they fog up. So, this month, November, I wanted to choose a topic that's been of some interest to me for a little while. I often like to look at historic collections, and this is one that we have never looked at. And yet, it is one of some significance. So, the collection, I'll show it to the camera here. There's the title page. And then I'll also show you here in the room what it looks like. It is a new Strathspey reels for the pianoforte, violin, and violoncello composed by a gentleman and given with permission to be published by Nathaniel Gow in 1796, by the way. So this collection by this unnamed gentleman, it actually was very well known who he was. He was Hugh Montgomery. He was the 12th Earl of Eglinton. At that time, he lived to be 80 years old, and in 1796, he was born in 1739, so in 1796, he's in his 50s. And he had spent most of his life as Colonel Montgomery because he was not like the direct son or grandson of the Earl of Eglinton. He was a cousin. But as sometimes happened in those days, as sometimes happened in those days, he ended up being the heir to the earldom because other closer heirs had already died. Now, he didn't become Earl until 1798. So when this book was published, he was not the Earl of Eglinton. He was just Colonel Hugh Montgomery. And so accordingly, a lot of the tunes in the book that he named for his family changed names because his daughters were Jane and Lilias. Well, after he became Earl, it was Lady Jane and Lady Lilias because of the way the aristocratic names work. And the same thing, his wife was Mrs. Montgomery at the time, but she ended up being Eleanor the Countess of Eglinton after 1798. So the book is full of tunes that he wrote for his family, his friends, things around where he lived, which was in Ayrshire. He knew Robert Burns, he knew Neil Gow, he knew Nathaniel Gow. He was part of this big circle of musical friends. And now, I think I was smart enough to prepare this and bring it with me, but it might take me just a moment to find the photo of, there's a famous picture of Hugh Montgomery, so let me just do a quick look up, actually. I have to switch glasses because I can't see my phone to look up on the internet with these glasses. We'll get that sorted. Sorry for the slowness on that. So, look up Hugh Montgomery, and because I didn't photograph it, painting by Rayburn. So Rayburn was a big, very famous Scottish painter, and no, just blow up the picture for us. Okay, there we go. There's the picture, and for everybody here, there he is in his Colonel Montgomery look. You can see he's got the red coat and a kilt. In this painting is by Rayburn, very famous portraitist of the late 18th century. And you can't see unless you can look very carefully at the background figures, but he is depicted as fighting in the French and Indian War in this painting, which is what he did. He was stationed in Canada for a long time, and I don't think he was a colonel in those days.
He's a colonel in that picture.
He is a colonel in the picture, though, because this was painted later. Yeah. Right. I don't have a date for when it was painted, although it would be possible to look that up. I just did not get into that kind of gory detail because I was more concerned with finding out the history of the names of the tunes that we're learning today. So that's this basic background. The other thing you should know about Hugh Montgomery, the whole Montgomery family that is in his line spells their last name with an I-E at the end instead of with a Y. So your typical spelling of Montgomery ends with a Y. Hugh Montgomery and all his relatives are Montgomery ending with an I-E instead. So if you want to go through and autocorrect all of the pages of music, they are in fact supposed to be spelled I-E for Montgomery. And all of the tunes in this book that I showed you are actually composed by him. In that day, it was not considered the cool thing for important people like him, aristocrats, or in those types of families, to claim that they wrote folk music. It was very fashionable to write it, play it with your friends, do it privately, but you're not going to go blaring around that you wrote this stuff. So that's why there's all this fiction that is by a gentleman, and everybody knew it was him. It wasn't hidden, but it was not public, which is different from all of his friends knowing. So, how about if I play you some tunes?
Well, before you start, I want to mention that this, like a whole bunch of smaller collections, has been reset and put up for free download as a PDF. I was at musicscotland.com. It's one of those. It's one of those websites, and I guess I could send out a link to it.
Yeah, that would be useful to put that up on the Film Club, page for members to access.
Right. There are a number of this and a number of other collections that Elke has
right, because it's
smaller collections, as well as you can buy.
Back when I went to get this, I had to go to some little office in the bowels of the National Library of Scotland and ask for this off of a paper typed list, and then get it reproduced
From microfiche.
In some cases I had to order the microfiche or film to be made for the first time, because a lot of these things, when I went in the 90s and early O's, these things had not been microfilmed because nobody had exhibited enough scholarly interest in them to make. So I had a part in making a lot of these Fiddle books accessible via that means. And now from that means they were digitized, or they were digitized directly from the originals in the holdings of the libraries. So we all benefit from that, because now, not universally, but frequently you can look up old collections online. It's not entirely as easy to do, because every one of them has the same name, a collection of Strathspeys and reels of the most interesting kind, sent for the violin, the piano, blah, blah, blah. Published by the Gauss, they published hundreds of stuff. So it's really hard to pin down anything by title, and yet libraries are all set up, search by title. So you can search by title and find 500 things that are not the thing you're looking for, just because it has the word Strathspey and reel in the title. So let me get to some tunes now. Hugh Montgomery also, just in general, was an interesting person. He lived to be 80. He did all kinds of things. He was a big proponent of new ways of more productive agriculture, a big proponent of transportation, import-export. He, and like I said, soldier, poet, musician. He's known to have played the cello. He may have also played the fiddle. He certainly understood how to compose music, and he was part of this big musical circle in that region of Scotland. And of course, as a rich guy in a high prominent position, he traveled around. He also was resident in Edinburgh, the Scottish capital, at various times, and in London, the British capital, at various times.
Do we think he would have been playing the cello part then on these compositions?
Well, I'll get to that in more detail, but no, he would have been playing melody on these compositions. He wrote most of them in cello-friendly keys. And in fact, I had a hard time not picking entirely tunes in B flat, just because that's a great key for cello. It's less so of a great key for fiddles. So you will understand after we get through all of this, and I tell you how hard it was to find the few tunes in D, A, and G that are in here. And then you won't be quite so upset about the ones in F and C and B flat. And you'll be glad that I left out all the E flat ones. So, unless of course you're a cello player, and then you'll be like, okay, why did you leave all this stuff out? Anyway, so also, he obviously loved Strathspeys better than anything else. So most of what he wrote is Strathspeys in B flat. And oddly enough, I was able to almost avoid giving you all Strathspeys in B flat. So would you like a slow air, a Scots measure, or perhaps a reel to begin with? What's your wish?
What? No Strathspeys? You just.
I could give you a Strathspey too. You want a Strathspey?
You just like
So
sold us.
no, the Strathspey, if I teach you a Strathspey by ear, it won't be in B flat. So, okay, let's modify that. Let's see if anybody online. Nobody online has said any opinion. So this is your time to chime in. Scotsman, or do you want to hear them? I'll just pick one and start, right?
Yeah.
Yes, pick one.
Okay. Well, I will give you a choice of keys. I got two Scots measures, one in F and one in G. Which do you want?
Oh, G.
G. Okay. Oh, and they're so agreeable online. They're saying anything you want. However, somebody else also said key of G. So this is Miss Scott's favorite. And actually, this is one of the ones where I have the least information about who was Miss Scott. So we'll just have to assume a friend of some sort. The Scots lived in the borders regions. He's from Ayrshire, but it doesn't mean he didn't visit. And in fact, one of the musical friends was Charles Sharp, who one of these days I will do a special on Charles Sharp. But Charles Sharp lived near Sir Walter Scott and that Scott family. So, there's a potential it could have been those Scots, but there's, that's a pretty common last name. And we don't know much else about Miss Scott. So here is Miss Scott's favorite. take that last phrase in. Oh, that's much better. Okay, so that's Miss Scott's favorite, and let's give it a go. There is a lot of scale work in this, and so just think about that. Basically, all of the running passages where there's eighth notes are scale work. Okay, here we go. Key of G. Pickup notes are D, C. Let's find them. It's always helpful. Okay, and then the start. Pickups this time. Okay, next phrase. Okay, third bar, same as the first. Okay, I think that makes it a little more straightforward. So we have these three measures, and by the way, that 3/8 note rhythm pattern, dum bum bum, particularly with the 2 second notes being the same pitch, is the Scots measure. So you're wondering, why is this categorized as a Scots measure? It's because it uses that rhythm pattern, dum bum bum, repeatedly. Now, typically Scots measures end with dum bum bum at the end of the phrase. This one had long notes at the end of the phrase. But so that makes it sitting a little bit on the crack between Scots measures and quick step marches. Sometimes it can be really hard to decide which it is, but this one has those dum bum bum da da dim bum bum dee da dum bum bum, 3 of them right in a row. Those are Scots measures. So there we are. All right, we're at the 4th bar to round out the half phrase, and the pickup note is in A, and then it goes down the scale and up, and ending on the D. Pickup note, down the scale, up the scale, again. Together with the other bars, we have this. Listen.
Repeated A right at the beginning, is that an 8th note?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're actually extending the quarter note into a dotted quarter note in that 3rd Scots measure rhythm. Yeah, it's one of the frequent tricks. So we have those 4 bars, that phrase. It then continues in the same way as before with. So those Scots measures again. Of course, we don't have the same pickups because we just have that run. let's go ahead and play those. And then here's the pickups to the next runs. And it sounds like it's going to do, but it doesn't. So the pickup notes are kind of like not heading you the right direction. D and C. And then go to an E note and down the scale from there. And down to D. So just the two scale runs from E and then from D. What are the pickup notes that go the wrong way? Okay, shall we try the whole phrase? All right. 8 bars. So the first time it's this natural progression, and we're down here. The second phrase around. The strange pickups that don't take you where you're going. So let's try to put that together. To this, so don't forget it. The second part is scale going up with an A pickup note. So let's all find our A pickup note. Why, yes, that's brilliant. Okay, so we climb the scale from G. Sending me little reminders that are completely irrelevant right now. Isn't computer technology great? Okay. Next bit, F natural. There's a great note in this tune. So this is the pickup note. And I wish I could say that it's all F naturals up there. It isn't. They change. So these significant ones are F natural, but then later on in the tune, you will need an F sharp. But I believe there's only one measure where you need that F sharp. Okay, so F natural, measure here in the second half. So two measures put together. Okay, next measure. Pick up that E. And the end of phrase. Okay, so we've got our 4-bar phrase. Let's put it together. Okay, next phrase starts the same way. And this will be familiar. So here's the second 4 bars. All right.
No, I do it again.
Okay.
I tried to, it's 2 E's. on the
Yes,
last
it is
That's-
2
that's what I was
E's in a
doing.
row. Yeah. It's an E pickup note, and then the scale, starting with the E. So the second 4-bar phrase. Again. Okay, ready for more?
There's more.
Okay, yes. So
You're
the
so
third
funny.
The third phrase, the third 4-bar phrase, is the same as the first 4-bar phrase of the B part. So nothing new to learn. Let's just review. How did it start in the B part? Sound familiar? Let's play that just to remind ourselves. That sounds like it's mostly there. All right, ending the last 4 bars starts the same way with that rising scale. No F natural this time. And here's where the F sharp happens. So let's find out. So let's first the first bar of the last 4-bar phrase, pretty much the same rising scale thing. So let's just do it. And then no F natural, but an E. And now we have a rising scale from D. F sharp, and then down from high A. So that second bar put together is this. there, the ending, familiar ending. We have seen this before. It's it sounds like you remember that one. So let's put it together. Listen as I play the whole structure. Familiar start. No F natural, just E. Rising, F sharp, coming down from A, and then the usual ending. Yes, we'll practice some more. Is there any particular spot? Or is it just putting
One
it
that you
together?
just played. I have no idea what you did.
Okay. So the first measure of the last four measure phrase. Rising scale. Transition with an E note. And then back down to the D. F sharp, and then down from a high A scale. And then we add our same ending that we've been using all along. So the odd thing about this, and if it feels confusing, it's because it's a little bit awkwardly constructed. The leading notes don't actually lead you where you're about to go many of the times. So you have, well, then you go back down. And then you don't go to a G, you go to an A. And there you are on E already, but now you repeat that E and do it again. So it does have some odd spots in it. So let's follow it through and see if we can get through all of those spots where it sort of starts to send you in the wrong direction. Just don't go there. Okay. From the G up the scale, E, pick up note, and then back down to a D, up to high A, repeat the E. There we go. Now, there's still some spots that you want sorted out.
But I feel like I don't have the rhythm quite yet.
Okay.
Is that because you were telling us, okay, and now I'm going to do this, and so then there's like
Right,
this
so
little
break in
break
rhythm as I do
there,
that.
or- yeah.
Okay, so to iron out the rhythm, this whole thing is eighth notes, quarter notes, half note at the end, except in that first bar of the 4-bar phrase where there's a dotted quarter because there's just the one E pickup note. Dotted quarter. Okay. Half note here. How's that? Much better. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. All right, we should try to put this tune together. We have not yet done the whole B part.
Yeah,
How
let's
about
go
we
like
do
that.
that?
Yeah.
So, luckily, most of this should feel very familiar because it's a lot of recycled material. Remember, our B part theme is where we introduce that F natural as a key note. So, pick up note of A, up the scale, F natural. First ending run. Same thing for the theme. Second ending. sharps here. Same ending. So let's all try the B part together now. I messed that up. Let's try it again. Okay, more practice on that?
Probably.
Why, yes, okay. And then we want to do the whole thing, so we practice all of it, right? But let's do the B part again. Because when I didn't cue the F sharps or the dotted quarter, they didn't quite appear. So let's do it. B part again, and remember, first 3 phrases, all familiar stuff, follows the pattern. Third time. The 4th phrase is what I mean. That one has the dotted quarter in it, the F sharps, the extra doodly up high, and then the same ending again. I'll try to remember to cue you for the dotted quarter and F sharps, and hopefully that'll get us through that section. Otherwise, it's sounding quite good. Let's remember how this thing began. Anybody remember the pickup notes? Yes, D and C. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
With the 3 Scotch measures, and then the standard endings. So I think you're going to be able to recall this A part without a lot of cueing. Let's give it a shot. The A part repeats, then we'll go directly into the B part from there. favorite by Hugh Montgomery, as well as Earl of Eglinton. Written back when he was not the Earl, but just Colonel Montgomery.
So were these dance tunes at that time, or were they?
Yeah, so Scots measures are an older form of dance tune. They were popular in the 1600s. And in the 1700s, up until about the time of the Jacobite Rising in 1745, at which point everybody in the lowlands got exposed to cool music from the highlands and said, we want, right? Grab hands, right? They wanted the strathspeys and reels. So then strathspeys and reels totally overwhelmed Scots measures as favorite dancing tunes in lowland Scotland as well. Whereas before they'd been primarily a highland thing, with occasional strathspeys and highland reels finding their way to the lowlands. So the Scots measures kind of got sidelined for a while, but then in the 1780s, there were some people who said, oh, but those Scots measures were really cool. And there was this little resurgence of Scots measures that got published in the 1780s and 90s. And then they kind of fell by the wayside again, where they never got completely forgotten because they got preserved in Scottish country dance tunes, many of which were then and still are Scots measure type of tunes.
And many of the Scots songs were set to Scots measures rhythms.
Absolutely, because if you ever try singing a song to a reel with lots of notes, like Deal Among the Tailors, try singing words to too many words, too many syllables. I'm glad I was just doing deedle, 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 right, instead of actual words. So, for example, of all the songs that Robert Burns wrote that are to reels, most of those reels are in fact Scots measures, and there were only a few where he favored no-D reels, and it was usually because it was something really special. Like, there's a busy reel called The Merry Lads of Ayr. It was composed by a friend of Robert Burns. He composed a song to it. It's not one of his best-known songs because guess what? It's hard to sing. Right. But things like Corn Rigs as a Scots measure. My Love Is But a Lassie Yet. There's your Scots measure right there. So it's easier to sing, and there's, it's just not as busy. So,
but everyone knew those songs already by 1757, and so they stopped printing them over and over and over again like they did in the 1740s, and
right.
They started printing reels.
In the 1760s and 70s, the strathspeys and highland reels were the novel thing, so they were what was cool. And it's just like these days, even though a lot of times we appreciate the coolness of modern composed tunes, we still like to play the old ones. It's not that we're not playing them. We're still playing Deal Among the Tailors. We're still playing Miss Shepherd and things like that. They come up at every jam. But then we like Tommy's Tarbucas because it has that cool chord progression or whatever it is that we like among the modern things. So people were still aware of Scots measures, but they kind of had this new vogue.
So in the earlier era, with the Scots measures, they would look kind of like what we think of as Scottish country dancing, or would they have been the dance itself?
Yeah, the dances would have been similar.
Okay.
A lot of them were used in the 1730s and 40s for country dances.
Right.
And I should point out that country dances in Scotland in the 1730s and 40s were Scottish country dances just because they were country dances done to Scottish music with sometimes some specialized Scottish steps that were not done in England. But it was essentially the same thing back then. It evolved, and nowadays what we call Scottish country dancing now is quite different from what we call English country dancing. But that's a gradual evolution. Back in the early decades, particularly of the 1700s, it was essentially the same form with different musical preferences. Okay, shall we learn a new tune?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this time I won't cut you out. Do you want to learn a strathspey?
How about a slow air?
Or a slow air? Okay, you want the slow air?
Sure.
Now, the slow air is a little bit fancy, but I think it's actually an accessible form of fancy.
What key is it in?
This one is in the key of D.
Great.
So it's one of a few tunes that he wrote in the key of D, and instead of the dozens in B flat. And then this one, it's going to call for another picture, so I'm going to have to do another picture lookup for you. So. And let me find. Yeah, there we go. All right. So the tune is called Mrs. Oswald of Auchenkruv's Favorite.
Yeah.
And so here's the picture of Mrs. Oswald of Auchenkruv.
It's very charming.
So this is another, show it to the camera here. This is another famous painting. I believe this one is by, oh yeah, this one is by Rayburn also. So he was well known for painting portraits. And she's in this very poetic pose, right? She's holding, I think it's a sheaf of music, and contemplative in this picture. And so she was a neighbor of, particularly at this time, if you know that Hugh Montgomery was not the Earl then, and so he wasn't living in the castle of the Earl. His branch as a family had a different house, which I think I did get a picture of that. Pictures are not so easily. No, I printed the pictureless version. Dang it. All right. Let's see. Let's see if I can get a picture of his house where he lived. Okay. There we go. When I turned it sideways, it changed which order they were in. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so this is a contemporary print of Scarmorley. Scarmorley. And I'll show it to this camera too. There it is, sitting on a rock or a cliff above a river. And so Scarmorley is now, currently, the name is spelled Skelmorley with an L. You'll see it in collections both ways. S-K-E-R and S-K-E-L, Morley. And the name, depending on what you think your transliteration of the Gaelic means, and what it translates back to. In Gaelic, it means something like, basically a big thing on the lee side of a big rock.
How romantic.
So more means big, scared is like a cliff or rock, and I guess the lee is a lee, but lee spelled different ways can also mean gray, so it could be the big gray rock. In any case, that was a contemporary print, so let me show you what the place looks like today, because it still exists. Here we go. This is the castle now.
Lovely.
There we go. Scarmorley. There it is. And it's sort of recognizable. If you look close up at the print, you can see that those same structures still are part of the house. So that was where he lived. And not too far from there is the estate of Auchenkruv, which is where Mrs. Oswald and Mr. Oswald lived. Now, Mrs. Oswald is also known as Lucy Johnston. Before she got married, she was from a different part of Scotland, but was known as very, very musical. And some of her pieces were set to poetry by Robert Burns. Robert Burns used her own compositions as a basis for some of his poems. And all the composers of the day wrote pieces for her. So I guess Hugh Montgomery can be an exception to that. Now, later on, when I was researching, I had this moment of, oh no, because it turned out one of Hugh Montgomery's daughters also married Oswald of Auchenkrug. And I thought, oh no, maybe this is actually a tune for his daughter. And then I worked out the timing, and that's not possible because his daughter was married to somebody else. And then later she married Oswald of Auchenkrug as a second marriage, right? She married in 1796 was when she first married, and she married some guy named McQueen. And then it wasn't until 1817, her second marriage, after being widowed, that she married Richard Alexander Oswald, who had previously been Lucy Johnston's husband.
Oh, but it was the same.
So it was the same husband,
Right,
but
okay.
after he was widowed and after Hugh Montgomery's daughter was widowed, they married each other as a later marriage.
So you did a whole thing on Lucy Johnson.
Yes,
and all the
we
tunes that
did.
were-
We had a whole series of Lucy
Yeah.
Johnston tunes. But I just wanted to make sure that I made it clear this is really the tune he wrote for his neighbor, probably because they had lots of musical evenings. And she played piano and harp and sang and stuff like that. So here's the tune for her.
That's a nice ditty.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great tune. So that is one I'm intending to record one of these days. Next album, actually, it's not on my next album, which is coming out in December. But that's because it's not Scottish. My next album is waltzes, stuff like that. Any case, back to this tune. It's in the key of D. It's written out in 6/8, so it looks like a jig on the page, but it's like a jig with way too many notes, lots of flowery stuff. So it's actually intended to be a slow air. It comes out sounding like it's in a triple meter, 3/4 time. If you read it, it's best to beat it as if each bar is a bar of 3 plus a bar of 3. So it's like 6 beats per bar. So the first bar of music after the pickup notes, it's this. And that is 1 bar on the page. You can see that it sounds like 2 slow 3/4 time bars. And that's how this whole piece works. All right, pickup notes, G and E. And then down the scale from F sharp. And up from B. With the pickups again. All right, ready for more? Next measure. So it's just a repeated A, F sharp, A. Any questions so far? Just keep going, right?
Yeah.
Stop me if you want me to repeat something and I look like I'm going on. Okay, third bar starts the same way as the first. But instead of a simple climb up the scale, it's with a fancy getting up to the next bar. A, B, skip that C. Right, so it's one of those pentatonic figures. Now we're already into the next bar, so I'm going to complete it. The next phrase starts out the same way. But instead of just going straight up, like it did before, it's a little twiddle on it. Next part of the phrase is the same. And then ending the phrase, going low. Low A. At the end of phrase. So the last 2 bars. So let's try putting the A part together. That's the entire 8 bars of the A part. Feels like 16 because of that slow pace. And it has sort of tells the full story in a long extended phrase. One more time on that. Ready for the next part? Okay, next part is a rising line. Going on. Same phrase. Second ending. So that's second phrase. Now the next bit recycles the first phrase. And the end of phrase. Okay, that's halfway through. Now, it does repeat most of it, so it starts off by repeating exactly. Okay, going on. Starts the same. Just as before. But now we have a special ending. So here's the special ending. It has a very quick pickup of 3 notes. Because we're going up to that E. D arpeggio is what's next. Listen to this. Direct repeat of the arpeggio. Here's the ending. final ending. It's an octave up of the phrase ending we've done before. Do you remember this? That's how the A part ended. So here we have the ending for the B part. So here's the final phrase put together. Arpeggios. Winding it up. High octave ending. Let's all play that. Okay, now I'm going to remind people, because I've noticed my bow and several of yours are very tight. So it's drier in here than your instrument's used to. So loosen up.
Is that too tight?
Hey, yours looks okay. I was seeing Patrick's and mine and saying, oh. And so depending on how dry it is in your own house or in your violin case.
I keep this house as high as I can keep it, which is 45% humidity. So
Right. And in the wintertime, they just react. You know, colder temperatures and less humidity held in the air for the most part. So we have learned all the bits. The challenge for the slow airs, especially one that's as extended as this one is just to keep them sorted out. It is quite possible to do. But in the meantime, it's slow enough that you can catch up. So if you don't go the right direction, you can hop back on the train. And it's at these speeds, it's not dangerous. Okay, let's do it from the beginning.
reminds me a little bit of those seal tunes
Ah.
with the kind of the repeating,
Yeah, well,
arpeggio.
there's like also the way I interpret it has a lot of sort of echo qualities. That's a lot of that is my interpretation, but it's written in the tune, not explicitly, but if you follow what I feel a tune is trying to say, you get these echoes of things that were previously in the tune. And so I play it that way in terms of its dynamics and little bits of phrasing. Also, you may have noticed I kind of conducted it, but there were some notes that I held out just a little longer than their actual value and let the phrases have a little more breathing space. So that's legal in Scottish slow airs. You wouldn't want to do it on a dance tune, because you'd mess up everybody's timing with the steps. But it's not a dance tune. This is for listening. And you're allowed to give it a little time. Now, we don't go overboard with that in Scottish slow airs. In Irish style air playing, you can expand upon the ornaments so much that it's sort of like out of time. It's like a moment out of time. I mean, that's kind of like the point of some of these Irish slow airs is like, oh, listen to it while I go crazy with ornaments. And then, oh yeah, getting back to the tune. Scottish airs don't do that. That's not considered kosher in the style, right? It's not native to the style. But you can give it a little bit of space and give it a little room to breathe at ends of phrases. Questions or comments? More tunes?
Yeah.
One more.
One more?
I love to have the paper.
Okay, well, people who are on the online here, you can have a say in this. You want another one by ear, or would you rather go to the sheet music at this stage? And people here can vote too. Who wants sheet music here? One fairly strong. And who wants more by ear? Oh, a bunch of people. Okay, and I haven't heard anything from the chat yet, so they're either
If they don't want to.
if they don't chime in, then I just
They can.
Well, don't forget they have a
just
lag.
cheat.
I know they have that.
Don't have a cheat, right?
Well, no, they'll just get their music out.
They may have their music out already. Is that what you're saying? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, so I have a driving reel, which is probably going to be the easiest to learn, but not necessarily the easiest to play. Or I have a nice Strathspey.
What key is it in?
Well, the Strathspey I was thinking of giving you is the one in D. The reel is in the key of G.
No, I'm judge the difficulty. I want to help judge the difficulty.
Isn't a
Either one's
specialty
okay.
Strathspey? If you say
Yeah,
the
it seems like we should do a Strasbourg.
Okay, let's do a Strathspey, because yeah, a lot of his tunes are Strathspeys. All right, here is the Strathspey. Now, here is one of the interesting things, and then this is the reason I brought along some of these other books. So, this book was published in 1796 when he was in his 50s. He lived to be 80, and he kept composing tunes, and he did not publish another book. So, a lot of his tunes are found in, this is the Gow repository, which was published mainly by Nathaniel Gow. It's later. There are a number of Hugh Montgomery's tunes in the Gow collections, which were published starting in the 1790s, but, or 1780s, yeah, 1780s actually. Late 1780s is when they started being, there's 6 books, and we've gone through all of them in Fiddle Club. So certain books in here have a number of Hugh Montgomery's tunes, and then there may be more in the Gow repositories, and there are some in the Beauties of Neil Gow, which was sort of like a retrospective thing published by Nathaniel Gow for decades later. And then Hugh Montgomery's tunes were popular enough, some of them, they're published in Lowe's collection and other 19th century collections. So many decades later, his tunes still being played.
So did you copy those and print them yourselves, or how do you get all those?
These books were offered by Jan Tappan's. I forget what she called it, but it was like original source material And I'm sorry, they're not available now that way.
Yeah.
But that's where I got them. I believe in when I see good fiddle tunes, I just buy them. If I see a good book.
Is that gonna be like included with what Peter is saying, the Highland
Yeah, so
Trust
some of
and
these
all
are now
these?
reset and republished in various ways. And you can also get, like I said, if you're diligent and you know what to look for, you can find these online. A lot of times, if you just look up something that sounds like that collection, you'll get some random fiddle collection from the 1790s.
Right. Now, the company that's putting out this collection is the Highland Music Trust. And they've got the big collections. They've got the Complete Marshall, and they've got Complete Macintosh, and they've got a collection called Highland Collections in softcover large books. But on their website, they also have a bunch of these smaller collections that have been reset in just a PDF. They're too small to reprint just a single collection.
These have been like cleaned up.
These have been cleaned. Oh, these have actually been reset.
Right,
So
they're
it's
in
not
modern
reset.
typesetting.
So a lot of times they're missing stuff that you can find in the original source.
Right. Sometimes they do that. The good ones actually, like some of them, just leave out the baseline. But this one I think is fully notated.
Yeah, I haven't
I
looked
think the
at
Eglinton is fully
it.
notated.
Since I had the original, I didn't need to.
Right. And then the trick
look it up that
for
way.
my trick, because I've got a bunch of these in a giant library, if you know the full name in exact language and you put quotes around it in your Google search, you're more likely to find that particular, a curious collection of the latest Scottish Strathspeys and reels versus a new curious collection.
That's right.
So you have to,
Or
you're looking,
a
it's like if you got the
curious
Gore
collection
Index.
versus a collection of curious.
Right. So if you've got the Gore
Yeah.
Index and you can sort of look up the exact name, it's
Um,
actually much easier to find it. And generally speaking, the place you're going to most likely to find it is archive.org, which that's partially the Internet Wayback Machine, but it's partially where libraries go to put up their PDFs of the documents they've scanned.
There are various ways to find these. I've had various successes depending on how specific you can be with the title and whether there are a lot of titles that are similar. Also, it helps when I know which library has it, and I'll search specifically the National Library of Scotland or Aberdeen University of Aberdeen Library, or something like that. Some of them do not offer all of their stuff online. Like you'd have to be like a university with a research library membership to get access to everything. But sometimes you can get access to a few things without having that status of being affiliated with some major institution. It depends whether you're looking for something that's a reset version, because you can find reset versions of all kinds of stuff on John Chambers' ABC Music Finder and the session.org. However, a lot of those versions are changed, and they're not like what they were in the original. They're just from various sources that are available in ABC notation online.
And 99% sure somebody's killed the baseline.
Oh, the baseline is never, it's never present on the session.org because I don't think they have their setup for baselines. It's occasionally present on John Chambers' ABC Music Finder. But mostly it's just melodies, often without chords, occasionally with chords. And so it can be really hard to get an authentic version. But that's my job. So that was all a very long-winded preface to say that this particular tune was composed after 1796, and therefore is not published in his own book, and I had to find it in a Gow collection.
Oh, okay.
So this one is from Gow's third collection, Mrs. Muir of Caldwell's Strathspey. Oh, and here's the charming thing. If you go for the spellings as published in the original books versus modernized spellings, it gives you a clear idea of how people talked back then. So it's Mrs. Caldwell, then, spelled in the old style. Caldwell is the name of
Okay.
the place in new spelling, well as in Well, as opposed to wall, Wall.
Okay.
So Mrs. Muir of Caldwell. Let me try that again. Sorry. So then it cycles back on itself. Nice dance tune. Now there is one note that I'm gonna look up just to make sure that I didn't transcribe it incorrectly. And luckily I brought it along with me. This book actually. And so I can quickly check and see if I got it right. Page 7. I got it wrong. Okay. Well, there's always an error, even when I try really hard to edit. So I need to find a writing implement here and correct it. So I'll just note for anybody who does look at the music later, which you're not doing now, right?
Right.
There's a high A in the B part that should be a G note. Okay. So we'll just take note of that and issue a fix that Pete will post on our website. All right, so by ear, but not in extreme gory detail. A G pickup note. And then we have a little. Next bar. Right, so Mrs. Muir of Caldwell's for Fred, who was asking which tune I'm doing. So from the beginning, 2 bars. Next phrase repeats with a different pickup note, a B pickup note. And the ending is different. But it doesn't resolve. So here's the first 4-bar phrase. Okay. So far, so good? Yes? All right. That is the entire A part. This is the 4 bars,
Okay.
repeats, onto the B part. We're starting up high with a G. G pickup note. So it's a stair step figure. And then an arpeggio. Second bar. Right, and then the second phrase, same pickup note. This is where it's an error in your sheet music if you're looking at that, which you shouldn't be at. This is by ear. But it says an A note for the pickup. In this part, it's really a G. So it's just like before. Stair step, arpeggio. Direct repeat of the first bar. And the ending, same as the ending of the phrase in the A part. So let's put 4 bars together. It's like this.
So is the F sharp, when does it snap and then when does it not? Is they always-
Okay, officially it does non-snap.
Okay.
And then it has it written straight, so it's actually your choice.
Yeah.
Either way.
I'm mostly about
But-
that.
The F sharp is dotted there.
So that
Then snapped.
one.
Then dotted.
Okay.
Then snapped. But it's not an F sharp. Okay, let's play that same phrase again. Okay, so far so good? Next phrase starts the same way. Let's just play that. And now here's our fancy ending where we change 4 notes. So the pickup is still a G, and we do a snap from F sharp to high A, and that's the real difference. And then another snap, and then our arpeggio and ending. Arpeggio. And that's it. That's the whole tune.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, this is one that's relatively structurally compact, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you relieved? And now parts 3 and 4. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There aren't any. This is done. We did it. So let's put the whole tune together. The A part is just 4 bars with a bunch of internal repetitions. That repeats. The B part is just 8 bars, no repeat. However, it has a lot of reuse and recycling within it. Okay, here we go. go to D there. Now, I admit, D is a good idea, but it's not what he thought of. It's not what the composer went. So you can write your own tune that goes that way, but it wouldn't be Mrs. Mura Caldwell. All right? So let's try that and go to an A note in the second bar. So obviously you have to go into another tune, right? And there's some choices there where you can decide that in the end it goes to a G chord, or you can decide that after being in the key of D, it goes into E minor and then B minor. So if you want to have that B minor ending, that's totally cool. It's allowed. So you can decide a bit on the chords. I have to say that for a cello player's collection, the bass lines in this collection aren't that awesome. And I think the reason is that Hugh Montgomery actually liked playing the melody on his cello, not the bass lines, at least when it came to his own compositions. And so he wasn't so much into, let's make up a cool cello bass line for this. And instead, here's how I play the melody. And then Nathaniel Gow would sort of like churn out a bass part for it. So that it could be played on pianos and stuff like that. All right, let's hand around some sheet music. And
while that's being handed out, here's the attendance roster.
okay, actually, little stacks. Each one is
Thank you.
4 pages.
That's what we doing anything other than with the attendance other than like our statistics, just to see how people are coming.
Statistics, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is that the only reason we're still collecting attendance?
It helps us
Okay.
somewhat in.
Why just keep attendance? Because we do have mailings, don't we? Right?
Nope.
We do mailings?
Mailings are opt-in.
We have opt-in mailings, so our system now, but it's still useful to help us correlate. So
And see who's coming to individual meetings.
that's right.
I haven't.
So for those of you who are listening online, and for those of you who just want the information, if you do not attend meetings and you want to get sheet music, you send a message to
When we have the mail.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll put an announcement that a mailing is
We'll
coming.
put an announcement out, and then you'll just respond to it and say, I need the full thing, or I need the months of January, February, March, or
Are we
whatever
doing
it
that
may
twice a
be.
year or 3 times a year? That's
Twice.
twice.
We'll be happy to do it twice a year.
So we'll probably do the first one in January.
Yes.
Maybe
So after
the January meeting.
After the January meeting, which is, I forgot the exact date, but it's the second Sunday in
Yeah.
January. After that January meeting, we will be sending out a message asking for those who want October, November, December, or January music to let us know which pages they need. Now, you don't have to know the page numbers.
If your
You can
name's
just
already
say, I
there,
need the
you can
music
check
for
the sheet.
January. or I need the music for these,
July.
all of those months. And we'll send you the right pages.
Yep.
But, let us know which ones you actually want. And
So we'll keep those.
And also at that time, you're invited to download everything that already exists.
Right.
Okay, page 6. It consists of the 2 tunes that we learned first by your Miss Scott's favorite, Mrs. Oswald of Auchenkrug's favorite. And let's see, did you notice that they're not all spelled with a U? This is because the Scots did not consistently spell favorite with a U like the modern British do. So that spelling was not standardized back then. So I've done it as given in the book. Okay, page 7, I have a nice quick step in B flat. Because, as I said before, B flat was Hugh Montgomery's favorite key. And this tune gets used for a Scottish country dance called the Reverend John McFarlane, which is a nice dance. The RSCDS transformed it from its original key to the key of C, I think, to make it easier to play on pianos. It makes it harder to play on string instruments. Because with the key of C, you have to shift up to the high C or stretch forward or whatever. So it might be more comfortable in C on other instruments, but it's originally written in B flat, so we're going to keep it that way. And have all the pages gone around? Do you have any extras?
I think I handed them back to you.
They gave you.
Oh, yeah,
Back to
they
you.
came back already. Look at them. There they are.
They're very efficient.
Yes. All right. So let me play this favorite quick step for you. Okay. You may very well ask, why is this any different from a Scots measure? It's because the composer thought of it as a quick step. Yeah, I mean, it uses those Scots measure bits, dum bum bum. However, he doesn't do dum bum bum da da din bum bum, at least not with any kind of regularity. And he obviously thought it was a march.
Yeah.
So.
And it's just, a strong wind would knock it into hornpipe territory.
It could. Which is why they chose it as a dance tune, because
Right.
they basically wanted a hornpipe, but they wanted one without lots and lots of notes in it.
Right.
All right, let's play it a little slower than I just demonstrated it. quick stuff. It says adapted from the Eglinton collection. The adaptation is that it's written in 4/4 with essentially everything that appears here as an 8th note is a 16th note in the original. So I have just conformed it to modern dance music standards so that it reads a little bit more like it is played for Scottish country dancing.
And think of all the ink you saved.
And I find it a lot easier to parse out 8th notes and quarter notes than 16th notes and 8th notes
Yes.
in various combinations. So just for clarity, I've switched all of the marches and Scots measures from their original form to this cut time form. All right, Mrs. Montgomery of Annick Lodge. So in his book, it's spelled Annick, so it makes it really clear that it's not pronounced Anwick, and instead it's pronounced Annick. So Annick Lodge is sort of like a subsidiary house on one of the Montgomery estates. And Mrs. Montgomery of Annick Lodge would have been either his father's brother's wife, so his aunt, or it would have been his daughter-in-law, one of his sons. But remember, he did not own the whole like Eglinton estate stuff. He was Colonel Montgomery. He had his he was a younger brother. He wasn't expected to inherit anything. He brought up his sons in military service. One was in the Navy, one was in the Army. And so until suddenly, all of his other relatives died off and he became the heir to the earldom, he was not like this big time guy. He was just a, ordinary gentleman who, actually did have to work for a living as a colonel. So Annick Lodge, this Mrs. Montgomery is related to him. Exactly how, I have not been able to determine because everybody was named Mrs. Montgomery. All right, so here's how it goes. Okay, so imagine that on the cello.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
It's on bowing. I can't see that fast.
Uh-huh.
On part B, the first full measure, there's 2/16 and an 8. Are you doing that all on
Yes,
one bow?
I am viewing that figure in bar 1 and 3 and 5 of the B part as an obligatory ornament.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm bowing it. So the principal melody note is really just the A, right? But these are ornaments that you cannot ignore because the composer wrote them into the melody. So just treat them like an ornament and attach them bowing-wise into the melody note of A. All right, let's play this thing under tempo to start with at about this pace for the first read through. Okay, we just had this little
Right,
comedy here where
I have
every
something in my
time
case.
Marilyn,
I have something in my case to,
every time Marilyn tried to play the page would flip because of the way that air currents in this room. You need a clip.
a clothespin, that'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. I have
So
one upstairs.
I was
but-
going to argue that this actually is a real case for
Just like
learning
in-
your tunes by ear because you never have that problem if
There you go.
if you know it by
Okay.
ear, right?
Well, anyway, give us a
Anyway.
laugh, right?
So I figured I should give you a nice Scots measure in F because we have this quick step in B flat. You gotta have a companion tune. And there it is. I think it's pretty sweet. Okay, page 8. At the top of the page, we have a tune called Ayrshire Lasses. So I mentioned he lived in Ayrshire. And it's actually not very far from the place where some of my Scottish ancestors came from. And in fact, I did this research on like the whole family tree, so I'd sort of like figure out what was going on there. And it happens that in my family, my grandparents on my dad's side were really into genealogy, and they researched it all the way back to so and so came to America from Scotland in a certain year, it's like 1640 something. It's actually long ago. And that was Robert Houston. So it turns out the Houstons were neighbors. So not very far away from the Eglintons, and some of the Houstons married into the Eglinton family.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so when I was looking back in the Montgomery's family tree, I found my own family name in it. So I'm related to this guy. That's very, 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 very distantly. So some common ancestor back in the 1300s. It's crazy that there's all this genealogical information going way, way back. So Ayrshire Lasses is supposedly Hugh Montgomery's most famous tune. I don't think it really is. It's like, but if you look in Wikipedia, it says blah 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 about Hugh Montgomery. He was known as a soldier, poet, composer, most famous for writing the Ayrshire Lasses, and that was like the first I'd heard that's what he was famous for.
Did you know the tune?
What?
Did you know the tune? I mean,
Never.
I never heard of the tune.
I never played Ayrshire Lasses
Okay,
before, but then I thought, okay, if it's supposedly his most famous tune, I guess we better be playing it. So let's play it. And this one, curiously enough, okay, it's in the Eglinton collection, but I kind of like the rhythm patterns, which are vague in that one. They're more defined in the Gow repository.
Oh, okay.
And then this is perhaps the source of why they thought this was famous, is because this is one of the ones that made it into Lowe's collection.
Oh, okay.
So later in the 1800s, Joseph Lowe published it, therefore
It had staying
it
power.
had staying power, right? And so I wanted the Gow repository version because it's also similar to the Joseph Lowe version, the one that made it famous. So here's how the tune goes. Ayrshire Lasses. So this one is one that you could really drive to if you're dancing. It just gives some power to the dancers. So let's play. Okay. The third strathspey on the page is Lady Glasgow. And when I first encountered this, it's the name of a Scottish country dance. And when I first encountered it, I was sure it was like metaphorical, that it was like, oh, this is the city of Glasgow represented as a lady. But it isn't. There's an actual person named Lady Glasgow, and there's Lord Glasgow, and the title dates way back to like, I don't know, 1300s or something. And you got to realize that until about the 1700s, Glasgow was not a big place. Edinburgh was where it was at. Edinburgh was the royal court. It was the city of learning. So it was the seat of government. It was where all the cultural happenings were. And Glasgow was this like minor town until it was discovered what a great port it was for transatlantic trade in particular. And so in the 1700s, Glasgow grew from this little, rinky-dink place to a big city. And now, of course, it's the biggest city in Scotland by a lot, and far bigger than Edinburgh. So Lady Glasgow is not metaphorical. It's referring to an actual person contemporary to.
But is it associated with the city?
Yeah, I would
Or is
suppose that some, most people who've had these titles,
Yeah.
the place name is not random. It's associated with a particular part of the country. So, at some point, Glasgow would have been a small town with land around it, and that land would have been the estate of this Lord Glasgow.
Okay.
And, and Lord and Lady Glasgow might have lived there.
Mhm.
So let me see if I have any information about who was Lady Glasgow. Oh, I didn't tell you anything about who was Mrs. Muir of Caldwell. I'll do that too. I have to put the right glasses on to read this. I can read sheet music with these, and I can't read the text. Okay. Right. So, Lady Glasgow in his time was named Lady Augusta, and she was married to George Boyle. And that's who was, and the Boyle family were the Lord Glasgows and still are. In fact, when I looked up Lady Glasgow, I found the obituary for the most recent Lady Glasgow, who did a lot of charitable works and raised money for cancer. So there you go. Anyway, I do have information about Mrs. Muir of Caldwell. She was either the wife or the daughter-in-law of this guy, William Muir, who was an MP for Renfrewshire, which is where my Houston ancestors are from, who was like this bigwig in Parliament. He was the Baron of the Exchequer of Scotland. He was a friend of David Hume, the philosopher and writer. And, kind of a big deal. So I think it kind of gives you an idea of sort of the circle of friends that Hugh Montgomery had, who were involved in the arts and culture and politics and government, economics, and agricultural life of Scotland in that day and age, in the 1780s, 90s, 1800s, early 1800s. So let's play Lady Glasgow. I'll play it for you first so you hear how it sounds. So the other thing that's curious about it is this is one of those Scottish country dance tunes that became disconnected. The dance became disconnected from its tune. And so the artist CDS published Lady Glasgow, and they're like, oh yeah, play any old tune. And then I looked up and was like, well, there's a tune called Lady Glasgow. So I always play this tune for Lady Glasgow if I can. At the end, so let me play the last 4 bars. There, that sounds more like it. All right, let's play it. Okay, here we go. It's ready to move on to the next tune of the medley for your dance. Lady Glasgow. And as you see, it's on from page 2 of the book, which means one of the principal tunes. You kind of front loaded it with a whole bunch of really good tunes. And This is one of the few tunes in the collection that is in the key of A. I'm not sure if there's even any other. This may be the only one. So, on to our last few tunes for this session. Mrs. Montgomery of Skelmorley, Strathspey. I mentioned that Skelmorley, or Skelmorley if you want to spell it with a modern spelling. Skelmorley was his house. And this Mrs. Montgomery is his wife. Her name was Eleanor Hamilton before she married him. And they had 4 kids. And I'm mentioning it because a lot of the Montgomery tunes of that day are related directly to his family. I mean, there were plenty of other Montgomerys. He wasn't the first Earl and he wasn't the last Earl. So there are lots of other Montgomerys who were, bigwigs in Scottish society, both before him and after. But he was the one who was really involved in the Scottish dance music. So there is a Lady Montgomery tune for his wife. This is not it. We had Lady Montgomery in 2 forms, as a slow air and as a dance tune that it's used as. It's the title tune for Montgomery's Rant, which is one of the most favorite dances of the dancers, so it gets played all the time. So there's a Hugh Montgomery tune that gets played regularly. That tune is
What we would call his most famous tune.
his most famous tune, right? Unless you believe the Wikipedia. And that's Lady Montgomery as a dance tune. We had it in book 8, page 21, and we had it as a slow air in book 3, page 7, and it's the same melody. In any case, that's how he wrote it. He conceived of it as an air. And so the modern dance tune version of it is completely not how he conceived of the tune. But she wasn't Lady Montgomery because she wasn't a countess at the time. He wrote this tune. So this is, Mrs. Colonel Montgomery, right? And so let me play this tune for you. He put it very first tune in the collection. So isn't that very politic of him? He puts his wife's favorite special tune right up top. Yeah, that's really nice. And I love how it changes between B flat and G minor. That's not the only tune where I use that particular device, but it is really nice. So this is even better with chords. All right, let's play it. Let's keep it really slow. All the ornaments written in this piece, by the way, are his. Nice tune, huh?
Pretty.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wish there was more information about her because I imagined she was musical, but don't know for sure. Don't know what instrument she played. I mean, it's pretty clear that he got together with musical friends, and and they're inviting, Lucy Johnston Oswald from the neighboring, nearby, and probably her husband, and they probably all play music together, but we don't know. Don't know for sure about that. Somewhere, somebody has like family papers and letters and diaries and things that would illuminate all of this stuff, but nobody's done that kind of in-depth research. So, Chisholm's Frolic. And no information at all about who is Chisholm, but the tune is pretty cool. I like it. Let's try that again. So that's going to be another one that cycles back. All right. So let's play Chisholm's Frolic slower.
Good.
And I'll give you a pickup note. Isms Frolic, shall we go over our ear tunes just one more time? How about Miss Scott's favorite?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, those little bits that I pointed out before, they caught me a little bit this time too. Mrs. Oswald's favorite.
Okay, here we go.
Not in a hurry. So I'll just note it's an interesting phenomenon that as soon as you see it printed in 6/8, everybody wanted to play it a lot faster than I thought. Ah, yes. So remember, that's a slow air. All right, Mrs. Muir of Caldwell was our third ear tune, so let's play it. And this is the one that had the error in it.
Yeah.
Bar 2 of the second line, the last note in that bar should be a G, not an A as printed. So that'll be corrected and posted on the website. And that is our music, our selection of music from Hugh Montgomery, the 12th Earl of Eglinton, who published his own collection in 1796 with a little help from the Gowls, and continued to compose tunes throughout his long life of 80 years. And to my mind, just an interesting example of that phenomenon of sort of the landed gentry class of Scottish music lovers and composers who, because they existed, created this amazing market for tune books that we have in part, that kind of people's interest in buying this type of music to thank for the fact that we have so many published Scottish tune books. And, to the point where he published his own tunes. He was really into it. So I hope you enjoyed this look at this late 18th century, collection. And have fun with it.
I think this is one of the best collections where I liked every tune.
Yeah.
I mean, all the tunes, all the collections are good, but I just really like
Sometimes you just hit stuff that really suits your taste. So have at it, have fun. And for those watching online, I'm going to sign out now. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.
That was my only
Okay,
picture.
screen
All of this
is
got
ended.